Good morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, December 19th, and we are here today for the Board Development Committee meeting. It is 10:05, and I'm calling the meeting to order. Ms. Harrison, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Representing Educational District 2, we have Ms. Aretta Bowden.
Present.
Representing Educational District 5 and Board Chair, Ms. Erica Mitchell. Representing Educational District at Large, Seat 9, Ms. Jessica Johnson.
Present.
Thank you. Also, I would like to make everyone aware, we also have representing Educational District 1, Ms. Katie Howard, also present. And Madam Chair, we do not have a quorum, but you may begin. Two, we do? We do have a quorum. I apologize.
Thank you. With only 3 people on the committee, 2 people do make a quorum, and we are official and moving forward. Thank you very much. I do want to thank my colleagues for their flexibility. Unfortunately, I did have to go home for a funeral last week and had to move this meeting, and so I appreciate your flexibility. And I do want to acknowledge that Board Chair Erica Mitchell did let me know that she was going to be traveling, but will be reviewing the information and will give me some feedback later. So thank you again for your flexibility. Is there a motion to approve the October 3rd, 2024 Board Development Minutes?
So moved.
Second. It has been properly moved by Board Member Johnson and seconded by myself, Aretta Bowden. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries. Next, is there a motion to approve the December 19th, 2024 Board Development Meeting Agenda?
So moved.
Second. It has been properly moved by Board Member Johnson and seconded by myself, Aretta Bowden. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries. We will now move on and proceed as the agenda aligns. The first thing I want to do is just do a quick check-in. And before the check-in, I want to share a short 3-minute video to give some context of the question I am going to ask you in regards to our check-in. And if we could cue the video, it'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Location, location, location. Brought to you by the Conscious Leadership Group. Find them on the web at www.conscious.is. Animation by Graham Franks. www.grahamfranks.com. One question that conscious leaders ask themselves over and over is, where am I? To support leaders in locating themselves as they ask the question, where am I? We offer this tool, a line, a simple black line. At any moment, all leaders and all people are either above the line or below the line. Our location describes how we're being with what is occurring in our life right now. If we're above the line, we are open, curious, and committed to learning. If we are below the line, we are closed, defensive, and committed to being right. Stop right now and simply ask yourself, where am I? In this now moment, am I above the line or below the line? Typically, when people are below the line, they believe certain things about the world. For example, they believe there is not enough. It could be that there's not enough money, or time, or space, or energy, or love. People below the line also believe that their story about the situation is right. People below the line also believe that there is a threat out there. Something or someone is threatening their desire for approval, control, or security. And people below the line see the situation as serious. The deeper below the line they are, the more serious things look. People below the line tend to behave certain ways as well. They tend to cling to an opinion, find fault and blame, gossip, explain, rationalize and justify, get overwhelmed, and avoid conflict or pursue conflict for the sake of winning. When people are above the line, they believe that learning and growing are more important than being right. They believe that all people and circumstances are their allies, here for their growth. They believe that from a distance, almost everything is funny. People above the line live in curiosity, listen deeply, speak unarguably, question all their beliefs, and live a life of play. Now, knowing what you know about being above or below the line, where are you? One thing to know as you consider this question: we're hardwired to go below the line. Literally, our brain is programmed to perceive threat, and when it does, a chemical cocktail courses through our veins, and we go below the line. This reaction was designed to help us survive in the presence of a real threat to our physical survival. An issue for modern-day leaders is that often our brains can't tell the difference between a threat to our physical survival and a threat to our ego or identity. We react and get defensive when we experience a threat to our ego. So in many ways, being below the line is natural and normal. But when we are below the line, we're not in a state, literally brain state, of high creativity, collaboration, innovation, and relational connection. We're simply trying to survive. Leaders today can't thrive if they're in survival mode. So the first activity of conscious leadership is location, location, location. In this now moment, where am I? Telling ourselves and others the truth about our current location begins the great conversation.
Thank you so much.
Being an executive woman is not easy. In 2000,
It's all good. We'll cut the commercial. So thank you for playing that video, and I've had the benefit of watching it a few times as I selected the video to share today. But after seeing this, I want us individually to think about where are we and understand that there is no right or wrong. There just is, right? It's your reality in terms of your current experiences where you are. And I can say personally, over the last couple of weeks, I have been oscillating above and below the line, above and below the line, dealing with personal challenges. And I find that when I am below the line, it's not a comfortable space for me because I am naturally optimistic. I am naturally wanting to look for the solution to a problem and solving it. And when I am below the line, it's a struggle for me. But that is the reality that the combination of the weight of this work that we're doing, the weight of the reality of the children in Atlanta, sometimes that can weigh on you, and then I'm not going to say you, I'm going to say me. Sometimes that weighs on me, and it puts me below the line in a space of, honestly, despair. And that's not a place I want to stay, so I consciously work to be aware of where I am. How does that impact the way that I'm interacting with people? And what can I do to get above the line? Because that is a space that I personally want to be, and that is a space that I believe I can be most effective. So I'm gonna stop talking, and I'm gonna share the mic to any of my colleagues who want to share. If you would like to share where you are, if you would like to share anything about that, and if not, then we will enjoy this comfortable silence while we think about it amongst ourselves.
Well, I'll just say, Board Member Bond, I appreciate the time for reflection. I'm probably fine at this time. Definitely more closed than I was, and I think just reflecting on that and what are the series of events that have led to that. And so looking forward to starting the new year off, hopefully a little more hopeful and ready to be more open. Always open to the learning part, but some of the other pieces, just I'm more closed at this time.
Thank you for your honesty and sharing, Board Member Johnson.
I appreciate that video share too. And like the two of you, I feel the heaviness because this is very serious, important work, right? So I I appreciate the video saying we're hardwired to be alert and aware of potential threats, and we feel threats to the work in different ways. The challenges, opportunities too. So trying to always be optimistic, but that's, continual work, and us doing that together. It's a lot, but we all know it's really important, which is why we're here. So thanks for giving us that food for thought and reminding us it's okay to understand and accept the realities, but how do we push forward to continue to have that space for creativity and positivity?
You're welcome. And I plan to share this with the full board. Drop it in a text and just, have some folks think about where they are and maybe meditate over the holiday season about how we want to come back, as Jessica mentioned, in 2025 and start a new, re-energized, and hopefully above the line, collaborative, creative, and searching for solutions versus wallowing in despair, if you will. And so, but the good news, right? I'm going to bring us back up. So the good news is the work that we're embarking on, right? The work that we're doing right now, if we all commit wholeheartedly to this work, then we will have focus, we will have collaboration, and that will lead to us accomplishing amazing things. So I had some words that I prepared, but I think I'm going to share them for the full board that just really just sums up my passion for what we're doing right now. And to sum it up, we have got to move together. And with the formalization of this committee and the work that we are to do, we will be empowered to move that work forward and to bring our colleagues along with us. And not in a way that they're following, but in a way that we are all moving together. So that being said, the last time we were here, we went through the policy that we are going to be recommending to the policy committee for full board approval that will codify us as an official committee, as well as the specific roles that we will play within the board. This has been reviewed by our Council of Great City Schools coach. We have also run this through our legal department, who's given it a formal title and name and done all that formal legal stuff that my mind did not do. So if y'all will take the time to review the marked up version, we'll pause, let you review it. You also have a copy in your folder. It's also on Assembly, and it's also on the screen. Just take the time to give it a quick read. And if there are things that you would like changed, then please speak now. For simplicity, the changes are in red and the crossouts have been included. There was a need to clarify when the chair would be elected. There was a request to clarify the community input, so for evaluation purposes, and at most to outside non-voting. And in addition to what was here in regards to the continuing education and actually, in addition to continuing education, you will see that the SOFG work does live based on this recommendation in the Board Development Committee. Questions, issues, concerns?
I feel good about where the document is now and feel comfortable taking it to the policy committee.
Sounds great. So what we will do, I too believe that this isn't a good place to take to the policy committee, who will take it through the policy rigmarole that it needs to go through. And so there will still be opportunities to speak up, make suggestions, or requests. But I do believe that this reflects the will of the committee. I will double check with Board Chair Erica Mitchell to make sure that this is reflective of her thoughts as well. She was very involved in the initial creation of this, so that'll be a quick conversation. All right, so we're moving on. Moving on. Check my agenda to see what's next. Oh, this is going to be a good conversation. So next on the agenda item, we're going to bring our coach in for this conversation, and it's going to be a discussion around the community engagement. And so this is something that Board Member Howard and I have been working on with our coach for a while, and we're incredibly intimate with it, but it doesn't matter how well I know this information and how well Katie knows it and how much we believe in it. It's time for our colleagues to know it equally as well and to be just as passionate about the why. So what we would like to do is share the planning document and just kind of walk through the questions that we've had to ask ourselves into putting together this community engagement, and then the steps that are necessary. But before we go to that, I've said this a few times, and I'm going to repeat that we are in the process of creating our next strategic plan. So the next 5 years, what is it that we want to accomplish, and how are we going to get it done? In order to have that strategic plan fully aligned with the community and the board, we need to go through a series of engagements. So some of you guys might be saying, but hey, we just did a gazillion engagement sessions with Dr. Johnson around his 100-day plan. Yes, we did. And that was with Dr. Johnson, specifically about your needs as a customer, right? So your specific needs for your children, your family, in terms of what do I need right now from the superintendent. And so you're probably wondering, why do we want to talk to you again? Because it seems like you just talked to us. We want to talk to you again because now we need you to come talk to us with a different mindset. We want to talk to you with the mindset of an owner. So you own this system. The community owns this system. And so as owners, what do you expect from this system? What do you expect from the outcome of this system? And so it's a slightly different conversation, which is why we want to come back out and engage, because we truly believe that if we build this plan together, then we can all work together to see it actualize. We can all support it. We can all have the same filter when we're trying to decide, do we do this program X or do we do this program Y? We can run it through the filter of, well, what does our community value, right? What is our community's vision? And if it's aligned with that, then we can roll. And if not, then we have a proper filter to say no. And so that's why this work is important. It's important for alignment, not just amongst us as a board, but us as a community and as a system. And so with that, we have a series of questions that we need to answer and understand before going out to the community and finalizing this engagement plan. Big picture, we come out, we talk to you again about what is your vision and your values. And that aligns with what the superintendent says he's going to do over the next 5 years, right? So I've said my say, and I'm passing it to the coach.
Hi, committee members. It's good to see you all today. So before we get too into our conversation, I want to make sure, has everyone had the opportunity to review the document, so that you'll have some familiarity with it. If you haven't, then that's fine. I just want to make sure that I'm calibrated to make sure that we're all on the same level. Okay, great. So Committee Chair Baldwin, that was a great lead-in, and thank you for kind of grounding this conversation in by clarifying the difference between the community as owners and the community as customers. This is an important distinction because a lot of times people show up. So I am in the school district where I live. I am both an owner and a customer. I'm an owner because I pay taxes in the district. I literally have an ownership stake in the long-term investment of the district. But I'm also a customer because I have kids that go to our public schools, and it's important for me to know which one of those hats I'm wearing when I show up to my school district. And so when the board is talking to the community, it's also important for you all to understand which hat they're showing up with. And the questions that are included here really are getting to they are getting to the point of engaging the community as owners. And so we're not just talking to parents, we're not just talking to staff, we're not just talking to students, although those are important people who, those are important owners in the school system. But it's also important for you all to make sure that you are talking to all of the owners of the school system. And so that's one of the things. And then also the board kind of calibrating its conversations to ensure that you are reaching out to kind of the corners of your community who you don't hear from as often, and making sure that the people that you are engaging with as owners are really a reflective representation of the school district as a whole. And those are a couple of the really important characteristics of board-led community engagement, effective board-led community engagement. It's also important that this be a two-way conversational engagement where there is a two-way flow of information, not just the board talking at the community or the community talking at the board, much like what happens in your board meetings, which is not any judgment on what happens in your board meetings. It's just not an opportunity to authentically engage with the community. And so what these really are is those opportunities to engage in a way that is authentic and creates ownership from the community side in the priorities that you're setting with the district. When you as a board have that ownership from the community and the goals that you've set and the guardrails that you're setting, it ensures that the decisions that you're making, as long as they are aligned with those goals and those guardrails, that your community's voice is living in all of the decisions that you're making. And that's all of the decisions that you make, the budget decisions, the way that you evaluate your superintendent, hire the superintendent, all of that. And so to that end, I'll go through. First, I'll kind of highlight the big buckets of the questions you have to ask or that you have to answer, and then kind of open the floor up to let you talk about what your thoughts are on this. So
Real quick,
the big
Ashley,
bucket.
I just want
Go
to
ahead.
share with my colleagues that I gave you a printout of the living document. This is not final. This is a space where we've been adding comments, and so we want those comments added, right? This is the space where we need everyone's input because we need everyone's buy-in.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm really gonna focus on like the big buckets for the questions, and then you can see kind of those questions that inform that big bucket on your printout. So first, how can the current engagement events be adapted to meet the expectations of it says expectations of SOFG, but really it's to align with effective governance practices. And so this is looking at your like your 2-year calendar for how the board is engaging. So looking at your current practices of what you're doing and how they are kind of how you can adapt them to make them more aligned. And so that's looking at your overall calendar for the next 2 years, the mechanism that you're using to collect feedback from the community, because having the conversation is great, but if you're not actually doing something with the feedback that you're collecting, then it's not, why are you having it? Who are the people, partners, and stakeholders that we need to make sure that are routinely incorporated, and then how each section, really understanding how each session will be structured. Then we go into like just the logistics and how the administration is supporting the board with these, because you actually have to have people who literally are scheduling the events and reserving the space in your meetings and making sure that all of the technology needs are there and that the advertising stuff. Then we go into a deeper conversation about who we will engage. So really getting into like going from the high level, like who are the groups of individuals, the different affinity groups throughout the city of Atlanta, and then getting more and more specific, talking about organizations that already exist and the different affinity groups within the community that have historically been difficult to reach or may need specific accommodations so that these meetings are accessible for them. And then we want to talk about how we're going to reach them. So, where are the meetings going to be had? How are we doing the advertising? How are we, like, our board members actually sharing it on their social media or sending emails and making those phone calls for those personal invitations? Then we get into how we're going to ensure that the board is going out with a consistent message. How are we ensuring that every single community that we engage with throughout the broader APS community is receiving the same message, and that it is a message that is endorsed by the full board and not individual agendas or ideas. And then we've already talked about how we're capturing the feedback. So the next section goes into just more specifics about that aspect. And then going from there, so that concludes the questions. And then we really go into the timeline, which I will reserve that for after you've talked about the questions that you need to be thinking through as a board.
Thank you.
With that, I'll turn it back to you all to discuss.
So if we go back to the beginning, what I wanted to highlight is that Board Member Howard and I have had a little longer time with this information, and we have begun to add our brainstorms to these questions. And the initial thinking in terms of how can current engagement events be adapted to meet the expectations of SOFG? Just a quick highlight, what is currently recommended is that, as Ashley mentioned, we create a 2-year calendar that is aligned with the monitoring calendar, and in that we go out quarterly as a board, and that those meetings align with things that we're going to talk about later, but with the board self-evaluation and with monitoring reports. So thinking we would maximize those meetings to share where are we on this work that we've engaged you on. So we've engaged you on the visions and values. We've engaged you on the goals and guardrails, and now we're coming back quarterly to tell you, what does that work look like? Where does it stand? And where is there more work to be done, if you will? So that's the large answer in thinking. There are a lot of specifics in here in terms of The logistics, would be a 75-minute session is what we're recommending. And that we definitely reach out to a broad audience, because again, this is owners, so we cannot just count on school communications, because we need to talk to people who not only have children in school, but people who are impacted by the district. So I'm going to pause for additional conversation in this space. And I understand that not all of us I can react right now, right? We are all wired differently. So no comment now does not mean no comment later. What I envision is that we're going to do a divide and conquer after this meeting in terms of communicating with and informing and collaborating with our colleagues. Thinking on the spot is we take this document. What I have found is sending a 13-page document and asking someone to read it and give you comments is just not realistic. Like, it's not even realistic for me, because I got a 29-page one and it took me a long time to get through it. So we need to simplify how we are communicating and how we're receiving feedback. And I'm thinking that a live conversation with notes is going to be the best way to communicate this information and to get feedback and collaboration. And even after that conversation, then, okay, here's a link, and populate any questions, because again, we're not going to be realistically maybe getting the most thoughtful feedback right then on the spot, but giving some time for that thoughtfulness, because ultimately, again, if we are not all on board, we're going to have obstacles moving forward. We need to show the superintendent that we are aligned. We need to show our community that we are aligned and that we are focused. And that being said, it's important that we do this right versus doing this fast. So I'm going to be quiet again. Comments? Suggestions?
I guess.
Board Member Baldwin, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So one of the things that I wanted to make sure that gets mentioned is that the board has had the opportunity. So at the beginning of this process, the committee, it's not the committee. So Aretta and Katie, I'm sorry, board members Baldwin and Howard, who have been working on this plan, they actually sent out a survey to the board. So before populating any of these questions, got some feedback from the board members who chose to provide it. There were a lot of people who said, I'm actually like good with things. So I want to make sure that it's clear that there has been board feedback up until this point. So
thank you for clarifying that, Ashley. We most certainly have had some input, and you see that in some of our comments that are detailed on this document. Some of the main comments, I'm not going to lie, have been around the script, and we'll get to that later. But we've definitely received some.
I guess I'm just trying to get clarity on when you say we need to have a conversation to get buy-in. Like, when would we have that conversation? I feel like there's so many moving pieces and upcoming priorities for the work that we're doing, and I'm just trying to say in my mind, yes, the packet itself was, I'm processing still, and I am one of those people. I need to let it sit for a minute, so my personal filter is there. But is that better? Oh, sorry. I guess what are you all thinking in terms of buy-in, implementation, holidays? I'll stop.
So the initial thinking was that we were gonna put this in front of the board at a board meeting, and it would not be the first time they saw it. It can't be, because you can't approve something when you just see it the first time. So that was the initial thinking. I'm not gonna lie, timing has been a little tight. Pushing this meeting back was not helpful. Not having a full committee is not helpful, and I'm gonna highlight the obvious is that we have some changes coming to the board, and I fully anticipate that the composition of this committee is gonna change. So it will need to be done at a board meeting, an official board meeting where we say, these are our next steps, and do we have consensus to move forward? That is my understanding. Cheryl or Ashley, and it doesn't have to be it could be a special called board meeting, but it has to be a time when we are all gathered together. Ideally, in a perfect world, this would happen in January. I don't know how realistic that is right now, but based on the timeline that we have laid before us, we are hoping that we can get approval, get trained, and move forward on this in January. That being said, training and approval could happen on the same day.
What's the training time?
Aha, so we haven't gotten to that part in the timeline. But in order for us to be impactful, effective listeners, there is a training that is recommended. So it's going to include stuff in terms of, I'm going to say, like how to actively listen in terms of taking notes. We would practice running through the scripts so we could make changes, so it's not like we're up there sounding like robots, but it's conversational and Atlanta forward. And it would include things like that, but it would require a commitment from our colleagues to come together. Think of like a retreat. I don't want to call it training. It would be a communications retreat where we would, we could, since we are in this space, present the engagement plan, get buy-in on that, and then talk about how we execute it with the quote-unquote training. I know you're processing.
I guess I'm just like, when?
That is a good question, because we are time challenged. So this is going to have to be something that when we commit to it, we're going to have to commit to it. I do not, I even asked, could this be done virtually? Like, is that an option?
Yeah.
It is not recommended because of the work that we're going to be doing around communicating. It would make most sense for us to be in the space together. I did try that.
So I guess just, if I were going to be trained, right, I don't want to be trained and have a script. So I would welcome a training on how to communicate the same message to the community, if it were in exchange for some flexibility in implementation of said script. And that's just for me personally. I don't want to do both. Like, if you're gonna give me a script, I'll read script. If you're going to train me how to communicate effectively to engage the community using the same message, then I'll do that. To me, it feels like, why would I do both?
Because it is twofold.
Which bucket am I living in?
It's twofold, because one, you're talking about giving the information, but the training is also about receiving it.
Okay.
So one of the things that we typically do when we're at listening sessions is we're sitting down and we're listening. I might be over here, someone else might be over there, and somebody else is taking notes. From my understanding, one of the techniques that we will be given is that we will be actively handwriting notes. Ashley would talk about the whys and hows of that. I know for me, that helps me to recall the information. It helps me to pay attention. It also signals to those who are talking that I'm paying attention. So different things that are going to allow us to be honestly above the line. If I could use a reference from earlier, so we're not sitting there being defensive and closed, but we are open to collaboration and creativity and listening. So I'm thinking, if what has been explained to me, and I'm going to let Ashley talk, that it's going to be not just about how we talk, but how we receive. And I think that's the most important part. And regarding the script, there is probably a space where, after you and Ken, which I'm recommending that the two of you guys take a stab at our very wordy script right now, With that practice, it's going to become more personal. It won't be the first time we're saying it. And then we could probably bold some things on that script, because I know Ken, he's a great communicator, and he is the master of telling you what you need to hear and communicating the message without a whole lot of extra stuff. So the thinking is, with that practice and with our initial input into the script, that we will be at a happy medium. I do receive that feedback, and that is we have received that from, again, both you and Ken and Vice Chair Jennifer McDonald, as well as from Travis, when he was reporting back, just in terms of how the community felt about our initial round of engagement. And it was that it wasn't quite authentic, and it's the script reading. And so the training is the retreat is the attempt to make it more natural, and for us to all be comfortable with what is on that paper and what we're sharing. Ideally, everyone can participate, but do know, if you do not participate in the training, it's going to be hard for you to participate in the listening. And you might be an obstacle. Like, if we have to look at you and check you because you're not doing what you're supposed to do because you didn't do the homework. So you might be put to the side in full transparency. We're not going to put you in the corner, but we're going to put you to the side.
So if I may, I think that one of the things, the big clarification that Board Member Baldwin made is an important one. It really is more of a retreat than a training. It is a work session where the board would go through the process of really refining the script together and coming to an agreement of, here are the things that we actually want to talk about. The document that you all have now as your script is a starting point. It is not something that the board is going to own until the board actually gets their hands on it and talks about it and agrees, like, these are the things that we want to discuss. And it is, so there is an informational aspect to it, because you do have to kind of level set the community so that they actually understand what it is that you're talking about. But that doesn't mean that it has to go on for 30 minutes or even 15 minutes or even 10 minutes. The conversation with the community really is about, listening more than talking, and giving them the opportunity to discuss in groups and making sure that it is conversational. And so the script isn't going to look right until the board has the opportunity to sit down and talk about it together in the same room. And then also we will talk about, like, what some of the best practices are with, like, meaningful and authentic community engagement. And I want to make sure that the board is comfortable going out and doing this, and comfortable with the things that you're saying, and just the entire process in general.
Thank you for that, Ashley. I was just sitting here thinking, about the importance of us coming together on this, and you've done such a great job, Aretta. Thank you for your leadership and the way you've approached this, and I appreciate your questions, Jessica, because at times I'm like, okay, we need to keep this moving. Like, we need to set these meetings up. But what we were reminded of when we went out with Dr. Johnson, and I think everyone did a good job of showing up and being present at those meetings, and of course Dr. Johnson and team did an excellent job. But it was a reminder that we all have to be bought into the work. It's not so much the exact words we're saying in the script, but that we're saying the same thing around our common focus to every single community. Because if not, we can slip into that space of kind of talking to a specific audience, like kind of playing it up based on just our connection to that group, which there's nothing wrong with that. And there's a space for that. But for this work, if we don't have that commonality around our focus, and you brought this up many times, Jessica, like, what are our priorities? What are we collectively agreeing to? And which are the goals for us? And we need to reset them. And without that, Dr. Johnson won't have all the backing he needs for the work he's doing, that we're obviously a part of, but we set the direction. And this is such a critical part of it. And if we can't do this, I don't see how we can collectively come together on those goals, which we have to do. Our goals are out of date. They're too broad. We need to narrow the focus. So I know it's asking a lot of people, but at the same time, it's such an efficient and effective way to get to the root of the work we have to do. And if we can, probably us in this group right here, really work with our colleagues and bring them along, however we kind of divide, I won't say and conquer, but divide up and say, okay, how are we going to talk with folks about, we need to do this. And then coming together for the retreat, which I think is more like just preparation for the work, it would be hugely invaluable and impactful, but it is critically important. And I'm ready to go too. I've been ready. But I appreciate this laying out of next steps. And back to just the questions, really want everyone's feedback and how we get that. Maybe we just put those questions in an email and say, okay, add your groups, add your take. A reminder that we would go out 4 times in person, 1 virtual, in regional settings at preferably high schools. But then everyone can take those survey questions to whichever group they have connection to, like Jessica, going to the Y, the Andrew Walter and Andrew Young Y. That was such a great place in the community where people come. Like, that QR code could be up there at the front. Those are all stakeholders in the community, and they can respond to those survey questions. And I'm thinking about when I go to PTSA meetings or other community meetings, more so with schools, but yes, if people routinely go to MPUs, take these questions. We'll send them to all the MPU chairs. But I don't want people to feel like they're limited by just the regional meetings, but it is very important that we go out in pairs at least to the regional meetings, which is actually asking less than we did for the community engagement with Dr. Johnson. Like this is doable, and if folks can't do this work, I'm really concerned about them doing the work fully to improve student outcomes dramatically for our kids. So I'm really excited about this. All I see is opportunity, focused above the line, but just, we all feel the heaviness and realness of this. So thank you, Aretta, for your leadership, and Jessica for yours on this committee, and I'm here to support.
And I'm going to, thank you, Katie, for that. I'm just going to point out some things real quick that are kind of buried in this document. So the initial outreach that we're recommending is 4 meetings that would hit the quadrants of the city and 1 virtual. In addition to the live meetings where there would be a script, there will also be a QR code that Katie mentioned. You scan the QR code, it takes you to a Google form that asks you the questions that we will be asking in the engagement. There are 3 questions that we're asking, and they will be worded the same way. As well as in those engagement sessions, the initial thinking is we introduce the work, we ask the question, the audience is in small groups, they converse at their table in small groups, then report out to the group. But to ensure that individual voices are also heard, there will also be a QR code that individuals would be encouraged to fill out. So we're looking at both qualitative and quantitative conversations. We would have the QR code to quantify the feedback that we're getting back, and we will have the engagement sessions for the meat behind, the qualitative information that's behind that. That is not the only engagement that is being recommended. That is the first round. Because as I mentioned earlier, we want continuous engagement with the community. We don't want this to be a, hey, what do you think? And then we disappear. It's a, hey, what do you think? And now, hey, look, this is what we're doing. A consistent check-in quarterly with, this is the update on the work. This is how you can help. This is what we're doing. So again, the thinking is when it's all said and done, all of that would exist over a 2-year calendar. So we will know, and the community will know, and it will be aligned with our monitoring. So to be very clear, when we're coming out and honestly what we're talking about. There are certain times of the year where we know we're going to have certain information. The board self-evaluation, holding us accountable and transparent for the work we're doing, could also be a part of that. So that's the aerial look of what this looks like. Now, the piece that was not in here is, how does this feed into the strategic plan? Like, what are we going to do with this in terms of, so after we do this engagement on a client level, not client, owner, on an owner level, we will have, okay, this is what our community thinks around these 3 questions. We will bring that to a retreat where Travis and Dr. Johnson will also have done data deep dives in terms of, this is our reality. This is where we are. And so we're going to meet on this is where we are and this is where we want to be. And the current expectation is that the superintendent and team is going to come to that meeting with some thinking around where we need to go. Not that we're just going to create this out of thin air, because that's going to take a lot of time, right? So they're going to give us something that we are going to respond to, something that we're going to collaborate with. But ultimately, we are going to be the ones that set that goal based on, okay, this is where we are, this is where we want to be. Realistically, this is how fast we can go. And then they will also have and here are our check-ins, which would be the interim that would come later, right? So I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of the game. But this process, which we will talk about later, we have an entire timeline that will take us through the resetting the goals and guardrails, adopting the goals and guardrails, the interim goals and guardrails. So this document will take us through the next phase of, okay, so now what are our goals? And as Katie mentioned, they may and probably will be in the same buckets, but we will know that after we do our discovery. But it's going to be the fine tuning of that. So yes, we want to increase and close gaps, but among who? Or if that's the case, right? So wherever we net out, and I've heard some feedback from the community, like, we've told you what we want. And I was like, yeah, but you told us from an individual level. I now need you to think bigger. And so we're going to be telling ourselves and them that. That's the long picture. I hope that I said it in a way that is clear. I'm working on my communication style, because I find that I'm so close to this that I got stuff going on in my head that I need to make sure is actually communicated and clear. So if there's ever a time where I'm speaking and you're like, what are you talking about? Back it up, please tell me to do that, because I am so entrenched.
Sure, and so I appreciate you giving that entryway. I think for me, you all are so deep into it. I'm sorry, you all are so close with it. It feels overwhelming coming, and I can imagine some of our other board colleagues who aren't a part of this meeting will also I'm like, oh, there's a training. You all have it all mapped out, and you're clear on the timeline, and maybe what I would need, or maybe what would be helpful for us to have collectively would be, this is step 1, these are the time, this is then what's going to happen next. So then I'm a visual person, so I heard it, and I'm like, oh man, that's a lot. Okay, and so what I need is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and this is the timeline that we're looking at, and these are the goals, right? And so that, for me, high level would be super helpful, so I can process and be more aligned. Because right now I'm like, these are layers of things, and then my questions, you're answering some of them, like, how does this connect to the strategic planning work that we need to do? How does this connect? And when, at what point are we resetting the goals? Like, these are all because I am a process person. Yeah. Those are all the questions that are bubbling for me, and you guys are, all the way into the weeds, and I'm still high level, like, what is the overall process, and how do we fit in with the goals I know we have to accomplish in the time frame that we have?
That's excellent feedback. And we have a visual that I love that we can add those steps to it, so it could be a one-sheet visual of how does this all connect. And that is Thank you. A nice flow chart, if you will.
Yes.
And I really appreciate that, Jessica, because I think that's how we'll get more feedback from our colleagues more quickly. Like with the questions, like we just need answers to like these 3 questions. And then, because in the implementation timeline, it does say like when we'll do what, but it is long. Like I even scan it, it's overwhelming.
Take you below the line.
So, but at least it's all there. So it's like your reference document. But I really appreciate you saying you need it chunked out so we know like what are we aiming for. And to me, it is our work session on resetting the goals. Like that's why we're doing all this work. It's not to just go out and get feedback to get feedback. It's because we actually need to reset something which is, and I know people feel it's been overused, but it's the North Star for our work. And then it's the accountability piece. To me, this all goes back to accountability for us with the community so they know what to expect. And then it's the accountability piece for the superintendent because at the end of the day, we hold him accountable for the work. And I think, you know, the education piece for the community on what our job really is, this shows, and for us, for sure, this is us in real time sharing with the community what our work is and what their piece is because they set, you know, the vision and values, and we work with them on that. So thank you for providing that. That's something I'm here to support you on that visual, like Dr. Johnson's a visual person too. So appreciate that. And it's easier to share with the community too. So thank you.
I think I'm really close in getting us what we're gonna need for the conversation, and I'm gonna turn it over to Ashley.
So much. And so there are a couple of things that I want to point out in the document that you all have in front of you. So on the let's see, it will be on page 3 actually. It breaks down. So there is kind of an informational piece here that's just, it's 1 page, and it talks about the cycle of accountability. And it actually, this actually does is it draws the connection between the community, the board, the superintendent, the staff. So the owner community, the board, the superintendent, the staff, and then the customer community, and the connection between the vision and values, the goals and guardrails, the interim goals and interim guardrails, and the strategies that inform those, and programs and services, and then how the accountability system works its way back up. So through formative assessments, interim assessments, summative assessments, and then like the overall results of the district. And so that is there, and there is also some text there that kind of explains it as well. So that might be helpful. And I actually have this in a probably more visually simple format as well. It's just for the purpose of this document, this is more of an informational document, so I wanted it to be more information heavy. Now going to the timeline, this actually is broken out into 3 different phases. And so the 3 different phases are through discovery, development, and deployment. So, and looking from the board and the district's perspective. So in discovery, this is about information gathering. So the board gathering information, creating shared vocabulary and shared expectations about the priorities that are being laid out in the strategic plan. So this community engagement process is literally part of that information gathering. It is going into the community and gathering information so that you can understand what their vision is for how student outcomes should improve in the district. And so this is, it really is the foundation for the entire strategic planning process. Then going into the development, that's where you transition from we've gathered the information, now we're going to do something with it. So that is going into your goal setting retreat and talking about, so understanding, getting that understanding of what the reality is from students, and turning that collective community vision and your understanding of that reality for students into clearly articulated goals that are very specific, and very clear. This is exactly where we're going to go in the next 5 years. And then deployment is moving into the actual state of like implementing the strategic plan. And so this is just the very first part of the implementation, just from community engagement through adopting a monitoring calendar that is going. So that's what it would look like for the board. I also shared your current adopted implementation timeline, which is very long, but it's also a 2-year timeline. But I wanted you to see, like, what is the thing that the board already said it's going to do, and all of the deliverables that are on that timeline. So that actually is the scope and the sequence of the board's agreed implementation. Y'all voted on it. You said, here's what we're going to do, the order that we're going to do it in. And so if you have looked at it, you will see that a lot of those things are off track. And so my recommendation is that we just go ahead and adopt a new implementation timeline, and that this first little piece be the starting point of that, so that the board can just be clear about where it is that you need to go, so that you can set the superintendent and this new iteration of your board up for success for the students' APS.
Thank you for that breakdown. And what I commit to doing, Jessica, I already have a visual in my head, because looking at this for someone who is not project managery, it can be daunting, right? You look at it, you're like, oh my God, right? It's overwhelming. And I can turn this into a visual that breaks down the process. And then for those who want the detail and the grit behind it, we can have that for the further. But I honestly have a visual in my head of building a house. Like, we talked about the foundation in terms of like how we build this house of, I don't know if it's a house of accountability, a house of outcomes. I'll come up with some fun name. That will give us a visual and just kind of like a top level, this is the work and how it connects. I would love that, the visual that you talked about, Ashley, with the connection, the visual that connects the community to the board, to the staff. I basically am seeing, I will create it in something like a PowerPoint, like a few slides that basically breaks down visually what we're talking about, so we can have that to update our colleagues in terms of, hey, update, this is where we are. And then hopefully with that update, they will understand the importance of the questions that we've been asking them over the months, in terms of really specifically in the who do we need to engage, who are the marginalized folks that typically don't show up, but we need their voice. Like, we really need each individual person's input to make sure that we are covering the city. Now, it was recommended, because we did do some deep engagement around our superintendent search and the finalist review, that we tap into that list. We are in the process of trying to, honestly, find all of those names in one space. So you may, colleagues, have to give us input again. But I know it exists, and I am calling on the universe to bring that list to us, please. But I think the summary, the high level summary, will help. A retreat will definitely help, and I'm thinking like reviewing, if we can take a stab at revising what does the implementation timeline look like adjusted to this. I have printed out the 2-year implementation timeline for my colleagues. It is a very long legal document. If you are someone that details mess with you, warning, this trigger warning. It will be triggering, but don't think of it as a list of things that aren't done. Think of it as a list of things that, when complete, we are going to be in an amazing space. So again, trying to keep us above the line and not below, because this will take you down there. But I am encouraged because with the policy review that we just did, this work is going to actually live somewhere. It's not going to be sitting in a gray area of we'll get to it, right? Because all the other fires that are coming down through the pike always take priority. This will be our priority, and we can be the champions that push this work forward. So when our colleagues approve the policy and the direction of this committee, we will be empowered to move this work forward.
So one other thing that I'd like to point out about the implementation timeline is that it is, so this timeline was developed prior to deciding that it would not go to the board at the next board meeting. So, so keep that in mind. But also, it is calibrated for to have everything accomplished on the timeline that Dr. Johnson has put together for getting the strategic plan adopted. So there are dependencies down the road that moving this too far, like, so moving the starting point too far down the road is going to mean that there will be an impact on that final deadline as well. And so it really is important to make sure that superintendent is at the table when these conversations are happening, so that the board can be clear about the impact of its decisions in respect to the timeline.
Thank you. So we have talked about a lot. This has been a very, very informational and I think productive conversation. And I appreciate you all for being here and for your engagement and your commitment. Jessica, I know this document is not your friend right now, but I fully anticipate that you are going to be a key player in helping us get this done. And I'm not saying that in intent to taunt, to I'm not trying to intimidate you, but in terms of, I really appreciate your aerial, your high level thinking, the questions that you ask about the why and where does this fit. And so I just want you to know that I'm going to be leaning on you to continue to be that person, right? In terms of how does this align? How does this connect? And helping us to do that. So T's looking into the future. What recommendations might we as a board development committee have to our leadership in regards to board member presentations and how those align with the work that we're doing? So in terms of how does all that other work that we're doing fall into this space so that we are staying focused on the main thing, right? Because that's how we're going to get this done. And the speech I'm going to give later, like, we're it. We are the ones who can make this difference. I'm going to say I, Genesis. If I embody this, if I stay focused, then the children of District 2 are going to benefit because we are going to be focused on their outcomes and not on adult inputs, adult outcomes, or adult distractions. So I'm excited. I'm encouraged. I have moved above the line. Come with me. You can lay on it, just don't drop below it.
Sorry. So, and I received that, right? I'm joking. I am fully vested in moving the work forward. I think the question that we asked at the beginning of the meeting, though, I want us to be as realistic as possible. Like, is the full borderline, right? And the timeline is great. All these dates, my staff doesn't let me see this stuff. So I do big picture and then I walk away. So this is okay. But I think genuinely, like, none of this works if everybody's not at the table, and I don't see, like, when does that conversation happen, and we can't wait on that to happen at a training. Like, where's the time where we say, is this a priority for everyone? Are we collectively going to show up? Because if it's only a few, then the work is heavy. And I think that's probably what I'm also sitting with, because we haven't had the full conversation about where people are on the line, over the line, whatever. But also, like, who else is going to help own parts of it. I don't think the full burden of the work and the implementation should like live in this committee. I think it starts here, but if nobody picks it up from here, we won't be able to. I can't see it being successful in that way. And so I think in being intentional about how you present the information in a way that is a little more digestible, but also, like, having the hard conversation, does everyone prioritize this part of the work? And that conversation has to happen. Yeah.
I certainly received that. Informally, I can commit to having those conversations with each board member in terms of bringing them up to speed. Formally, if our leadership agrees, we could consider having a 3-page summary, this overview, check-in presented when we do committee updates. But committee updates is not usually a space for discussion, so I'll have to talk to Board Chair Mitchell to see, is there a space in discussion, in action, where we can say, hey, this is what the committee has come up with. This is the high level detail. We have spoken with each of you individually to address concerns, and this is where we are and how we want to move forward. Do we have consensus? I am sitting in this space of trying to think of realistically, can I get that done? And I want to say yes, because it has to be done. And I think that I have all the pieces to make this work. It's just a matter of sitting down for a couple of hours and putting it in that digestible form. I'll need to do that ASAP, because that was going to be what I use to talk with colleagues. Katie, because you're as close to me with this might be something that we can divide and conquer. Jessica, you could be the first person that we present to, right? Because you'll help us fine tune, like, does this capture what it is that you need, and do you think this is going to work for all of our colleagues, and what we know about our colleagues? What am I going to need to dial up or down? So that is something that I can commit to doing. I will need to speak with leadership to see. When I looked at the agenda, it does seem like there may be some flexibility in that space. And so, I mean, we can make the request and do the, Lord have mercy, do the work to get us there. Katie?
I'm here for it.
Ashley, do you think that is a realistic plan of action?
Yes, and I'm also happy to share some of the one-pagers that I have produced for some of the other districts that I've worked with. Of course, they're going to be specific to those other districts, so I wouldn't suggest you reuse them, but they may be something that you can draw inspiration from. And
I would love that.
And that is my work product, so it's not like, you wouldn't be borrowing from Austin ISD or Albuquerque. So I'm happy to do that.
Excellent. It would be great for inspiration, and then we would add our Atlanta touch, of course, to it. Whew. Did I just commit to that? Happy holidays. It's all good. I say it with love. We can do this. Thank you, Katie. See, look at that. Look at us moving above the line. Above the line. I'm gonna walk around with a line. The line's gonna move. Okay, so I think that we have successfully moved through all of the items in number 2, presentations and discussions. And we've actually kind of talked about other business, which is our next steps. But is there any other business that anyone would like to discuss? I do want to point out to my colleagues to please check your training and just be aware of where you are in regards to your needs and training needs and what we have. And now I'm going to look over to Miss Dina Harrison and see, do we have any public comment?
Madam Chair, we do not, and I would also like to mention, I failed to state at the beginning of the meeting that we do have General Counsel Madam Cheryl Shaw sitting in for Nina Gupta. She is present.
Hi, Cheryl. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here. This has been a very interesting discussion, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Hopefully interesting in a good way, because, you know, sometimes people use interesting for other things. But I do appreciate your presence and welcome any comments or redirection you may have for us if we have strayed.
No, I think you're on point. I think everything has been a very productive discussion.
Excellent. I appreciate you, and even more seeing your face. Okay, so now do we have any? I already asked about public comment, and I think you said that they were waiting in line trying to get in. Just kidding. But I do invite the public to join these meetings. I think we have some very rich conversations, and I think it's pretty educational. It is most certainly online, so if you're watching the replay, thank you. All right, so I think we're moving on to number 5. If all hearts and minds are clear, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
It has been properly moved by Board Member Johnson. Seconded by Areta. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. We are adjourned.